I'm 8 years old in 1959, and I'm watching the very first episode of The Twilight Zone. It stars Earl Holliman as an astronaut trainee in isolation. The title of the show is Where Is Everybody? He thinks he's in a small town and nobody is around, who's actually hallucinating. And that's when I first started asking, what is going on here? And I remember my dad saying, well, this is the kind of testing that they're giving the astronauts. And in the end, we become aware that Earl Holliman is actually in an isolation booth. So, and he's hitting the panic button at the end. You were one of the very first people to actually undergo this kind of sensory deprivation, and you were in an isolation tank, as I remember. Why don't you tell our viewers about that experience?
I'd be happy to. This test was taken at the VA hospital in Oklahoma City. It's called Phase 2 of the astronaut testing. Okay. And the men did not have this test, only 3 of the girls. Prior to going into this tank of water, I was tested psychologically for my knowledge, what I stood for, my education. They even gave me the Rorschach test. And I said, you know, somebody spilled an awful lot of ink on this paper and I don't know what to think of it. They gave us, we had to eat barium, we had barium enemas. They wanted to know what our body was like inside and out. Some of the girls didn't make it because they found things that they didn't even know that they had. They even had us drinking radioactive water. For what reason? I have no idea. We were put in front of x-rays, but it didn't mean anything to me. I just did what they told me to do. I think I made it through all the psych tests okay for a kid. All the time I'm in this area of being tested by these psychological doctors. A thermometer's being put in my mouth. What are you guys doing? Well, you'll find out eventually. Every 2 hours. And they dutifully write down the results. Okay. On the 3rd day, I'm in my swimsuit, as they told me, bring your swimsuit, we're going to do a different type of test. You're going to lay on top of some water. I said, okay. There was this huge tank of water, I wouldn't know, 10 feet round and 8 feet deep perhaps. So I had my swimsuit on. They gave me 2 pieces of styrofoam, about this big, to be placed under the back of my neck and underneath the small of my back. So I'm floating on top of the water, actually like this with my head up, without having to struggle. I understand that one of the girls did struggle a little bit, but I got in there and I was used to swimming at the hot springs in Taos. So I just laid there. And they said, now we're going to have a mic over your head. We'll pick up your heart rate and your breathing so we'll know that you're okay. Now they've plugged up my ears, they've turned down the lights, and all 5 senses have been taken away from me. They wanted to see how I was going to react. Taste, touch, smell, everything.
So the room is completely black at this point?
Absolutely. Everything is taken away from you. I laid there. I was supposed to talk, sing, tell jokes, say anything I wanted to say. I didn't talk in those days, so I've come a long way. I think I fell asleep for I thought maybe for a minute. It turned out to be 30 or 40 seconds because they could tell it from the microphone and my breathing. That I was so relaxed. Now what's very interesting here, and for you viewers to know, with them taking my temperature, they could bring the humidity and the temperature of the room perfectly down to my body temperature, and the water perfectly to my body temperature. So I slapped my face, I couldn't feel the water. I could slap the water, I couldn't feel it. Now if you do this, you can feel the air. I couldn't feel that. Everything was completely to my personal temperature. So, after a period of time, the microphones come on. And they, Wally, what time do you think it is? I said, well, I don't know. I don't have any real physical needs here. He said, well, we're going to turn the lights on. take your earplugs out, be very careful getting out of the tank, and come on out. So I did just that, and I kind of had to get used to the lights. I knew there was a clock on the other side of the door. So I could hardly wait to get through that door and see that clock. And as I proceeded through the door, the clock was covered up. They didn't want me to know how long I'd stayed in at that point.
Okay.
So then I'm with a towel around me and getting dressed, and they wanted to ask some of the same questions that they had asked before. Had I changed my mind on any of the questions that I'd answered? No. Not bad. So they said, well, you stayed in 10 hours and 35 minutes. You have broken all records that we ever intend to set by this isolation test.